The clock in the living room ticked softly, the only sound in the house. Martha Hale stood near the window, wiping her hands with a kitchen towel, waiting for Ryan to come home. She had cooked his favorite dinner, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and warm rolls, but it was nearly cold now. When the door finally opened, Ryan walked in, headphones around his neck, phone in his hand, not even looking at her. "You're late," Martha said quietly, trying to keep her voice calm. "I was out," Ryan replied, dropping his backpack on the floor with a thud. "You could have called," she said, trying not to sound like she was nagging. Ryan rolled his eyes. "I'm not a kid, Martha." Her heart pinched a little every time he called her by her name instead of Mom. "I know," she said softly. "But I made dinner, and—" "I already ate," he interrupted, grabbing a soda from the fridge. Martha felt the words hit her like a slap. She had been waiting all evening, keeping the food warm, and he didn't even care. "Ryan, we need to talk," she said, her voice a little firmer now. He sighed, clearly annoyed. "About what?" "About the money," she said. "Your college account is almost empty. You've been spending too much. I can't keep refilling it every month like this." Ryan's head snapped toward her, anger flashing in his eyes. "So what? You think you can control me just because you pay for things?" "I'm not trying to control you," Martha said, taking a step closer. "I just want you to be responsible." "Responsible?" He let out a short, bitter laugh. "You know what your problem is? You think you're my mom. You think you get to tell me what to do. But guess what?" His voice rose suddenly, louder than she had ever heard. "You're not my real mom." The words hit her like a brick. For a moment, the room was completely silent. Martha's chest felt tight. She stood frozen, the towel still in her hand, staring at him. Ryan didn't stop. "You don't get to run my life. You don't get to decide anything for me." Martha swallowed hard, her throat burning. She had raised him since he was a baby. She had stayed up with him through fevers, packed his lunches, worked extra shifts to pay for his school trips. She had been there for every scraped knee, every broken heart. And now this. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell him how much it hurt. But she didn't. She put the towel down slowly and said in a calm, quiet voice, "Okay." Ryan blinked. "Okay. That's it." Martha nodded, her face unreadable. "Okay," she repeated. Then she turned and walked down the hallway to her bedroom, closing the door behind her. Inside, she sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. The house felt painfully quiet, like it was holding its breath. She could hear Ryan moving around in the kitchen, the clatter of a soda can, the sound of the TV turning on. When the noise settled, the tears finally came. They rolled down her cheeks silently, hot and heavy. She didn't cry like someone hurt by words. She cried like someone who had reached the end of a long road. Hours passed. She didn't move. She didn't sleep. Her mind replayed the moment over and over. His voice shouting, his face full of anger, those words she could never take back. By the time the sun started to rise, Martha was no longer crying. Her face was dry, her eyes swollen, but her mind was clear. She stood up, went to the mirror, and stared at herself. "You're not my real mom." The words echoed in her head. She took a deep breath and whispered to her reflection, "Maybe it's time I stop acting like one." She changed her clothes, put on her shoes, and grabbed her car keys. There was no shaking in her hands now. The woman who left that bedroom was not the same one who had entered it the night before. When Ryan woke up later that morning, Martha was already gone. The morning air was cool as Martha drove through the quiet streets. She hadn't eaten breakfast. She hadn't even had coffee. Her stomach was tight, but her mind was steady. The hurt from Ryan's words still burned inside her, but instead of breaking her, it gave her strength. Her first stop was the bank. She walked inside calmly, like she had rehearsed this 100 times. The teller greeted her politely. "How can I help you today, Mrs. Hale?" "I'd like to close an account," Martha said, her voice calm but sharp enough to make the teller look up quickly. It took less than an hour. Ryan's college account, the one she had been pouring money into for months, was shut down. She transferred what remained into her own savings. As she signed the final paper, she felt a strange calm wash over her. By the time she left the bank, her phone buzzed with a message from Ryan. "Hey, I need more money for next week. Don't forget." Martha stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard, but she didn't reply. She simply placed the phone face down in her purse and drove away. Her next stop was the apartment manager's office. The landlord, Mr. Turner, was surprised when Martha asked him to change the locks. "Is everything all right?" he asked carefully. Martha smiled politely, though her eyes were hard. Everything's fine. Just change them. Today. By noon, the locks were new. Ryan wouldn't be able to walk into his apartment without her. After that, she made one more call, to the dealership. The car she had worked so hard to buy for Ryan, the one he never took care of, was put up for sale. Within hours, it was gone. When she returned home that afternoon, Martha finally brewed herself a cup of coffee. She sat at the table, slowly stirring sugar into her mug, as her phone began to vibrate again and again. The first call she ignored. The second she silenced. By the fifth, she turned the phone off completely. She sipped her coffee in silence, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock. For the first time in years, the house felt like it belonged to her again. But peace doesn't last long when there's a storm brewing. By evening, Ryan showed up at her door. He banged on it hard. "Mom, what's going on? My card got declined. Why are the locks changed?" Martha sat in the living room chair, staring at the wall. She didn't move. She didn't answer. The knocking grew louder. "Open the door." "This isn't funny," he shouted. Her eyes filled with tears, but she kept her body still. She pressed her hands together tightly and whispered, "Not this time." Ryan's voice cracked with anger. "You can't do this. You can't just cut me off." But she could. And she had. After nearly 20 minutes of yelling and pounding, the noise finally stopped. The house fell quiet again. Martha's shoulders shook, not from fear, but from release. It was done. That night, she made herself dinner, a small bowl of soup. She sat at the table alone, no phone beside her, no one demanding anything from her. For the first time in years, she tasted freedom. She thought of all the times she had sacrificed. The extra shifts at the diner, the years she spent patching holes in his jeans, the times she stayed up late making sure he had everything he needed. She thought of how easily he had thrown those words at her. "You're not my real mom." As she lay in bed that night, she felt a heavy ache in her chest, but also a new kind of strength. The next morning, she expected silence. But instead, there was a knock at the door again. Softer this time. Almost hesitant. When she opened it, Ryan was standing there. His eyes were bloodshot, his face pale. But this time, he wasn't empty-handed. He held a wrinkled envelope in his hand. "Martha," he said, his voice trembling. "I found something." She frowned. "What is it?" Ryan's hands shook as he held out the envelope. "It's from Dad. A letter. You need to read this." Martha froze. She knew that handwriting. She knew it better than her own. Her husband's. The man she had buried years ago. The man who had carried a secret she had hoped Ryan would never discover. Her heart pounded as she reached for the letter. The world seemed to tilt, as if the ground beneath her was shifting. Everything she thought was behind her was about to come crashing back. Martha's hand trembled as she took the envelope from Ryan. She could barely breathe. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges, but the handwriting was still clear. She knew it instantly. Her late husband, Daniel. Ryan's voice broke the silence. "I found it last night. In Dad's things. Why didn't you ever tell me?" Martha's throat tightened. She wanted to say something, but her lips refused to move. Slowly, she opened the letter. The words were short, but each one cut deeper than the last. "Ryan, if you ever find this, I need you to know the truth. Martha is not your birth mother. Your real mother left when you were just a baby. She couldn't handle the responsibility. But Martha stepped in. She raised you. She loved you like her own. Don't be angry at her. She saved you." The room spun. Martha pressed the paper to her chest. For years, she had kept this truth hidden. She thought she could protect him from it. She thought he didn't need to know. But now, here it was raw and undeniable. Ryan stared at her, his jaw clenched. "So it's true. You're not my real mom." Tears blurred Martha's vision. "Ryan, listen to me." "Don't," he snapped, stepping back. "Don't try to explain. You lied to me my whole life." Martha's voice cracked. "I never lied. I chose not to tell you. You were so small. You needed love, not another wound. I didn't want you to grow up feeling abandoned." Ryan shook his head. His eyes were red, but his anger was louder than his pain. "You should have told me. You should have let me decide how to feel about it." The words pierced her heart. She wanted to hold him, to make him understand, but she could see the wall between them, thick, unmovable. Ryan turned away, pacing. "All those times you told me you knew what was best for me, all those times you made choices for me, it wasn't because you cared. It was because you wanted to pretend you were my mom." Martha's knees felt weak, but she stood tall. "No, Ryan. I didn't pretend. I was your mom. From the moment I held you, I chose you. Every scraped knee, every late-night fever, every sacrifice, that was me. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to. Because I loved you. Her words hung in the air. Ryan's chest rose and fell heavily. For the first time, his anger cracked. His lips trembled. But she didn't want me? His voice was small, almost childlike. Martha's heart shattered at the sound. She stepped closer. No, sweetheart. She didn't. But that's not your fault. It never was. She walked away. I stayed. Ryan pressed his palms against his eyes, trying to hide the tears. His shoulders shook. The boy who had shouted at her days ago now stood broken in front of her. Martha reached out, but stopped herself. She wanted to hold him, but she knew he wasn't ready. Not yet. I didn't tell you because I was scared, she whispered. Scared that one day you'd look at me the way you are now. Like I was nothing. Like I didn't matter. Ryan dropped his hands slowly. His eyes were wet, his face pale. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The house was silent except for the sound of his uneven breathing. Finally, Ryan whispered, I don't know how to feel. That's okay, Martha said softly. You don't have to know right now. For the first time, Ryan didn't fight back. He sank into the chair at the table, staring at the floor. The anger was gone, replaced by something heavier, confusion, sadness, and regret. Martha folded the letter carefully and set it down. She sat across from him, hands folded tightly together, her heart aching but steady. The truth was out. There was no going back. That night, Ryan stayed at the house. He didn't talk much. He didn't eat. He just sat in silence, like a boy who had lost something he could never get back. Martha lay awake in her room, staring at the ceiling. She knew the hardest part was still to come. Forgiveness was not instant. Trust was not automatic. But for the first time in years, there was also honesty between them. And honesty, even when it hurts, is the first step to healing. The house was quiet the next morning. Martha woke early, the way she always did, but the silence felt different now. Ryan was still in the living room, curled on the couch, asleep in his clothes. His phone was on the table beside him, the screen dark. For once, there were no buzzing notifications, no loud music, no laughter with friends. Just silence. Martha stood in the hallway, watching him breathe. He looked younger in sleep, almost like the boy she remembered. The little boy who used to hold her hand and beg her not to let go. Her chest tightened, but she forced herself to turn away. She went to the kitchen, brewed coffee, and waited. When Ryan finally woke, the air between them was heavy. He rubbed his eyes, sat up slowly, and looked at her. For the first time in days, his voice was quiet. I don't hate you. Martha let out a shaky breath. I know. He swallowed hard, his eyes red. But I don't forgive you. Not yet. She nodded, accepting his words. You don't have to. Not now. They sat in silence for a long time. Then Ryan said what she knew was coming. Can you open the account again? Or give me the car back? Her stomach tightened. She had been waiting for this. She shook her head. No, Ryan. Those things are gone. And they're not coming back. His jaw clenched. So you're just done with me? Martha's voice was steady, even though her hands trembled. No. I'll never be done with you. You're my son. That doesn't change. But I'm done carrying you like you're still a child. I won't do it anymore. The words hit him hard. His eyes widened, then narrowed in anger, but the anger didn't last. It faded into something heavier, defeat, maybe, or realization. He leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. Martha's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. You'll learn. That's what growing up is. You'll make mistakes. You'll fall. But you'll learn. And I'll be here, not to fix it all for you, but to remind you that you can stand up again. Ryan looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time since their fight, he saw not an enemy, not a liar, but a woman who had given her life to him. His face crumpled and he whispered, I'm sorry. Martha crossed the room slowly and sat beside him. She didn't touch him, not yet. She just sat, close enough that he could feel her presence. I know you are. And one day, you'll be ready to say it without guilt. But not today. Today, just breathe. The hours passed quietly. Ryan stayed in the house, moving like a shadow, barely speaking. When evening came, he packed his bag. At the door, he hesitated. His hand rested on the handle, but he didn't open it. I'll call you, he said softly. Martha nodded. I'll be here. He left without another word. The house felt emptier than ever, but Martha didn't cry this time. She sat in her chair, folded her hands, and breathed. Days turned into weeks. Sometimes Ryan called, sometimes he didn't. When he did, his voice was softer, calmer. He asked how she was, not just what she could give him. The walls between them were still there, but cracks had begun to form. One Sunday afternoon, months later, Ryan showed up again. This time, he wasn't angry or desperate. He stood at her door with flowers in his hand and tears in his eyes. "Mom," he said, not Martha, but Mom. "I'm ready to talk." Martha's heart nearly gave out from the weight of that single word. She stepped aside, letting him in. They sat at the table for hours, talking honestly, painfully, but truthfully. By the time the sun set, Ryan reached across the table and took her hand. "You're the only mom I've ever had, and I'm sorry it took me this long to see it." Martha squeezed his hand, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "That's all I ever wanted, Ryan. For you to see. The past couldn't be erased. The scars would remain. But from that day forward, their bond was no longer built on secrets or blind sacrifice. It was built on truth, hard lessons, and a love that had survived fire. And sometimes, love that survives fire is the strongest kind of love there is.